Imagine this. In the 14th century, the world was full of chaos and suffering, a time when survival itself was a luxury for most people. In Europe, the Black Death had swept across the continent like a ruthless storm, wiping out a third of the population and leaving once thriving cities in smoldering ruins, with empty streets and abandoned homes serving as a tragic reminder of the catastrophe. In North America, long before the Age of Discovery, countless indigenous peoples lived in perfect harmony with nature, forming diverse tribes that relied on hunting, gathering, and primitive farming to survive. They respected the land that sustained them, passed down ancient traditions through oral stories, and built close-knit communities bound by shared beliefs. And in East Asia, in the heart of the Yuan Dynasty's oppressive rule, a boy was born into such abject poverty that he would soon be left homeless, wandering the streets in a desperate struggle to stay alive. But this beggar, scorned by many and written off by all, would one day rise to the highest seat of power, founding one of the most powerful and enduring dynasties in Chinese history. His name is Zhu Yuanzhang, and this is his extraordinary story of resilience, ambition, and triumph against all odds. Over the next 40 years, this man would overcome more hardships than most people can ever imagine, enduring losses and struggles that would break even the strongest of spirits. He lost his entire family to a devastating famine that swept through his village, leaving him utterly alone at the age of 16. He begged for crumbs of food to stay alive, sleeping in ditches and temples, and later fought in countless brutal wars, facing death on the battlefield more times than he could count. But what makes his story even more remarkable, even legendary, is the world he lived in during these dark years. At the same time he was fighting to survive, Europe was slowly recovering from the Black Death, with kingdoms struggling to rebuild their shattered economies and rebuild trust among their people. In North America, the indigenous peoples continued to live their traditional lives in tribes, unaware of the distant conflicts and upheavals happening across the oceans. Today, we'll follow Zhu Yuanzhang's incredible journey, from a homeless beggar struggling to find his next meal to the Emperor of Ming. In the 14th century, China was ruled by the Yuan Dynasty, a regime established by the Mongol invaders who had swept across the land decades earlier. The Mongol nobles lived in extreme luxury, enjoying vast wealth and privileges, while the Han people, who made up the vast majority of the population, were treated as second-class citizens, denied basic rights, and subjected to cruel oppression. Taxes were crippling, with peasants forced to hand over nearly all their crops just to survive, and natural disasters were frequent, with floods and droughts devastating communities year after year. The Yellow River, once a source of life, flooded relentlessly, destroying crops, washing away homes, and leaving millions of people homeless, starving, and trapped in a cycle of despair. Sound familiar? At the same time, Europe was still reeling from the aftershocks of the Black Death, which had killed 25 to 30 million people, 1/3 to 2/3 of its entire population. Peasants in Europe were also trapped in abject poverty, bound to feudal lords, and forced to work endless hours on land they would never own, with little hope of a better life. Both East and West were trapped in a state of chaos and suffering, and ordinary people everywhere were fighting a silent battle just to survive another day. In China, the people could no longer bear the heavy yoke of oppression, and rebellions broke out like wildfire across the land, each one a cry for justice and freedom. The most famous of these was the Red Turban Rebellion, a massive peasant uprising that would ultimately change the course of Chinese history. These rebels, made up of ordinary farmers, workers, and outcasts, fought bravely against the Mongol rulers, hoping to create a better life for themselves, their families, and future generations. Meanwhile, in Europe, the 100 Years' War between England and France was raging on, a brutal conflict that dragged on for decades, killing thousands of soldiers and innocent civilians alike. Peasants in France and England, fed up with poverty and exploitation, also rebelled against their feudal lords, but their uprisings were brutally crushed, just like many of the rebel groups in China. In North America, long before the Age of Discovery, countless indigenous tribes thrived in their own way. They lived in harmony with nature, developed unique hunting and farming skills tailored to their lands, and maintained their own rich tribal cultures and traditions, facing their own struggles such as occasional tribal conflicts and the harshness of the natural world. It was in this chaotic, unforgiving world that our protagonist was born. In 1328, in a small, poverty-stricken village in present-day Anhui Province, China, a baby boy was born into a poor peasant family that could barely feed itself. His parents, illiterate and struggling to survive, named him Zhu Yuanzhang, meaning eighth, because they were too poor to give him a proper name, a reflection of how little hope they had for his future. No one, not his parents, not the villagers, not even the powerful Mongol rulers, could have imagined that this tiny baby, born into extreme poverty in a forgotten corner of China, would one day become an emperor who would rule over millions of people and leave a lasting legacy that would span centuries. Zhu Yuanzhang's childhood was no different from that of millions of poor children in China at the time, a life of constant hunger, hardship, and despair. At the age of 6, he didn't go to school, for education was a luxury reserved for the wealthy. Instead, he spent his days herding cattle for a local landlord, working long hours just to earn a handful of grain to help feed his family. He wore ragged, tattered clothes that barely kept out the cold, ate little more than chaff and wild vegetables, and often went days without a proper meal. This was the same harsh reality for poor children in Europe. They were forced to work from a young age, had no access to education, and lived in constant fear of hunger, disease, and oppression. Zhu Yuanzhang's family was large, with several siblings, and his parents struggled every single day to put food on the table. They were honest, hard-working peasants, but in the corrupt and chaotic Yuan Dynasty, honesty and hard work were not enough to survive. Power and privilege were the only currencies that mattered, and they had none. In 1344, when Zhu Yuanzhang was 16 years old, a catastrophic disaster struck his village, wiping out everything he had ever known. A severe drought parched the land, turning fields into dust, and was soon followed by a swarm of locusts that devoured what little crops remained. To make matters worse, a deadly plague swept through the area, killing people in droves. One by one, Zhu Yuanzhang's family members died. His father, his mother, his eldest brother, all taken by hunger and disease. He had no money to bury them properly, no one to turn to for help, and he was left utterly alone in the world, a 16-year-old boy with no family, no home, and no hope. This kind of unspeakable tragedy was all too common in both China and Europe at the time. In Europe, the Black Death had already torn countless families apart, leaving many young people orphaned and homeless, just like Zhu Yuanzhang. For a 16-year-old boy surrounded by death and despair, this was the end of the world, or so he thought. But in that moment of utter darkness, a spark of resilience was ignited in him. A refusal to give up that would carry him through the darkest years of his life. With nowhere to go and no one to help him, the 16-year-old Zhu Yuanzhang went to the nearby Hongwu Temple and became a monk, hoping that the temple would provide him with food and shelter. He thought this would be a way to survive, a chance to escape the cruelty of the world outside, but the temple also soon ran out of food, as the famine and plague had spread everywhere. At the age of 17, he was forced to leave the temple, becoming a wandering monk, essentially a beggar. traveling from village to village in search of food and shelter. For 3 long years, from 17 to 19 years old, he wandered from place to place, begging for crumbs, sleeping in the open air under trees or in abandoned temples, and seeing the worst of human suffering: families torn apart by hunger, villages destroyed by disease, and people driven to desperation. During these 3 years of suffering, he saw how cruel and unforgiving the world could be, but he also saw the quiet resilience of the people, how they kept going, even when all hope seemed lost. In Europe, wandering monks and beggars were also common during this time. They traveled from village to village, begging for food and sharing stories of hope and redemption. For Zhu Yuanzhang, these 3 years of begging were not just a struggle to survive. They were a crucial lesson in life. He learned to be tough, to observe the world around him, to listen to others, and to never give up, no matter how hopeless things seemed. And this toughness, this unyielding spirit, would help him survive the years to come and propel him to greatness. In 1352, when Zhu Yuanzhang was 24 years old, he received a life-changing letter from his childhood friend Tang He, who was serving in the Red Turban Rebellion army led by Guo Zixing. The Red Turbans were fighting valiantly against the Mongol rulers, and they needed more brave soldiers to join their cause. Zhu Yuanzhang had nothing left to lose. No family, no home, no future to cling to. So he made the bold decision to join the Red Turbans. This was a turning point in his life, a moment when he went from a wandering beggar to a soldier fighting for a cause. Just like the soldiers in the 100 Years' War in Europe, who fought for their kings and their lands, Zhu Yuanzhang, but he would later be named, picked up a weapon to fight for a better future, not just for himself, but for all the people suffering under Mongol rule. The Red Turbans were not well-trained or well-equipped. They were ordinary people, just like him, driven by anger and hope. But they had passion and determination, just like the European peasants who rebelled against their feudal lords, refusing to be oppressed any longer. Zhu Yuanzhang was brave, smart, and quick to learn, and he quickly stood out from the other soldiers, earning the respect of his comrades and his leaders. Zhu Yuanzhang, then 24 to 25 years old, was not just a brave soldier. He was also a smart and strategic thinker, with a natural talent for leadership. He often gave valuable advice to Guo Zixing, the leader of the Red Turbans, offering insights into battle tactics and how to win the support of the people. He never retreated in battle, even when the odds were stacked against him, and he led by example, fighting alongside his soldiers and earning their unwavering loyalty. Guo Zixing was deeply impressed by his courage, wisdom, and loyalty, so he made a bold decision. He married his adopted daughter Ma to Zhu Yuanzhang. This was a great honor for a former beggar, a sign that Zhu Yuanzhang had risen far beyond his humble beginnings. In Europe, marriage was also a powerful way to gain power and form alliances. Nobles and knights married to strengthen their positions, just like Guo Zixing used marriage to bind Zhu Yuanzhang to his cause, trusting him to help lead the Red Turbans to victory. Guo Zixing also gave him a new name, Zhu Yuanzhang, which means to destroy the Yuan Dynasty and stabilize the world. From that moment on, Zhu Yuanzhang was gone. Only Zhu Yuanzhang remained, and he had a new, clear goal: to end the chaos, drive out the Mongol invaders, and build a better China for its people. In 1355, when Zhu Yuanzhang was 27 years old, Guo Zixing died, and he took over part of his army, becoming a leader in his own right. He knew that to succeed in his mission, he needed a strong, secure base, a place where he could train his army, recruit more soldiers, and build a foundation for his future empire. So he led his army south, crossing the mighty Yangtze River, and set his sights on Jiqing, present-day Nanjing. Jiqing was a strategic city, located on the banks of the Yangtze River, with fertile land for farming and convenient transportation for trade and military movements. Just like the Italian city-states in Europe, which became powerful by controlling key trade routes and building strong economies. Zhu Yuanzhang knew that a strong base would be the key to his success. After a fierce, bloody battle against the Mongol forces and local warlords, he captured Jiqing and renamed it Yingtianfu, blessed by heaven. This was his first major victory as a leader, and it gave him a place to rest, recruit more soldiers, train his army, and plan his next moves. It was here that he began to lay the groundwork for what would soon become the Ming Dynasty. After capturing Yingtianfu, the 27 to 30-year-old Zhu Yuanzhang did not rush to declare himself king. Instead, he followed the wise advice of his trusted advisors. Build high walls, store plenty of grain, and delay declaring kingship. He knew that patience and preparation were the keys to long-term success. He trained his army rigorously, turning ordinary peasants into skilled soldiers, and he encouraged farming, helping the people in his territory recover from the devastation of war. He reduced taxes to ease the burden on the peasants, repaired old water conservancy projects to prevent floods, and built granaries to store grain for times of famine. This was a smart, strategic move. Just like the European lords, who improved their manners to increase their wealth and feed their people, or the indigenous peoples in North America, who developed primitive farming and hunting skills to sustain their tribes. Zhu Yuanzhang knew that a strong army and a prosperous, loyal people were the foundation of a powerful empire. While other rebel leaders were busy fighting for power and wealth, wasting their resources on petty conflicts, Zhu Yuanzhang was building a solid, stable base, and this would make him stand out from his rivals and ensure his ultimate victory. By the 1360s, Zhu Yuanzhang was not the only rebel leader in China. He faced two powerful rivals who also dreamed of unifying the country and seizing the throne. The first was Chen Yuliang, a powerful warlord with a large, well-equipped navy who controlled the vast Yangtze River region. The second was Jiang Shicheng, who controlled the wealthy eastern regions of China, where trade and agriculture flourished. These two rivals were powerful, ruthless, and determined to destroy Zhu Yuanzhang and take his territory. In 1363, when Zhu Yuanzhang was 35 years old, he and Chen Yuliang fought the legendary Battle of Poyang Lake, the largest naval battle in Chinese history at the time, with hundreds of ships and tens of thousands of soldiers on both sides. Zhu Yuanzhang used clever tactics, including fire attacks, to destroy Chen Yuliang's massive navy, and Chen Yuliang was killed in the heat of the battle. 3 years later, at the age of 39, Zhu Yuanzhang led his army to defeat Jiang Shicheng, unifying the entire southern part of China under his rule. This was a remarkable achievement, similar to the European kings who fought for decades to unify their fragmented lands. Just as England and France were fighting for control of territory and power, Zhu Yuanzhang was fighting to unify China, to end the chaos, and to bring peace to its people. He was not just a soldier or a leader. He was a visionary who knew how to win wars, unite people, and build a future. 1367, when Zhu Yuanzhang was 39 years old, he was finally ready to end the Yuan Dynasty once and for all. He sent his most trusted generals, Shu Da and Chang Yuchun, north with his powerful army, and issued a powerful proclamation to the people of China: drive out the Mongol barbarians, restore China, and save the people. His army was well-trained, well-equipped, and filled with passion, and the people of China rallied to his cause because they were tired of the Mongol oppression, tired of hunger and suffering, and ready for a new beginning. In 1368, when he was 40 years old, on January 23, 1368, at the age of 40, Zhu Yuanzhang officially ascended the throne in Yingtianfu, proclaiming the founding of the Ming Dynasty with the reign title Hongwu, meaning Great Military, a testament to his military prowess and his mission to protect his people. Standing on the steps of the imperial palace, wearing a magnificent dragon robe and a golden crown. He accepted the worship of his loyal officials and the cheers of the people, who had suffered for so long and were finally ready to embrace a new future. This moment marked the end of a century of Mongol rule, the end of chaos and suffering, and the beginning of a new era in Chinese history, an era that would last for nearly 300 years. Looking back on his life, from a homeless beggar at 17, wandering the streets in search of food, to a wandering monk, then a soldier, a general, and finally, an emperor. His journey was nothing short of a miracle, a story that defies belief. Just as European kings struggled for decades to unify their lands, Zhu Yuanzhang unified China with his own hands, bringing peace and stability to millions of people who had suffered for far too long. His story is not just a legend of China, it is a powerful testament to the power of perseverance, ambition, and resilience, proving that no matter how humble your beginnings, no matter how great the obstacles, you can change your destiny and even the course of history. Zhu Yuanzhang's life was a remarkable journey of perseverance and triumph, a story that continues to inspire people around the world centuries later. He was born into extreme poverty, lost everything he loved at 16, begged for survival on the streets, and fought countless wars, facing death and despair at every turn. But he never gave up, never lost sight of his goal, and never forgot the suffering of the people he would one day rule. Eventually, he built an empire that would last for nearly 300 years, an empire that would bring peace, prosperity, and cultural renewal to China. His story tells us that greatness is not determined by your birth, by your wealth, or by your status. It is determined by your courage, your resilience, your ambition, and your willingness to keep going, even when all hope seems lost. At a time when the world was in chaos, Europe recovering from the Black Death, the indigenous peoples in North America living their traditional lives before the age of discovery, Zhu Yuanzhang changed the fate of China, leaving a legacy that would endure for centuries. Today, his legacy lives on, a powerful reminder that even the most humble among us can rise to greatness, that even in the darkest of times, hope can prevail, and that one person can truly change the world. Thank you for watching.